So today I'm going to talk about how to bring in neuroscience technology into the market through industry engagement. So this presentation will be useful for deep tech early stage startups, such as neuroscience startup that wants to actually license their technology to large companies, to big players, maybe in the consumer electronic market. So industry engagement is very critical for early stage startup. Why? Because early stage, it allows you to identify the market need and accordingly adjust your narrative. And of course, the focus of your technology to provide a comprehensive solution that can solve real problems and can result in closing a deal. So don't forget that your task is not just to talk to them and make connection. You want to close the deal eventually. So the today agenda is that I first start with must-haves and then how to get attention from the big players, the actual outreach. So I'll give you some tips on that, what to expect during the meeting, and how to keep them engaged after the meeting, and hopefully eventually closing a deal. So before you even start thinking about outreaching, you make sure that you meet the following criteria. First of all, you should have identified you should have identified a target customer and serve them with the right product. So it is very important for early stage startup to identify the right problem and provide the right solution for that. So this is the so-called product market fit. So your solution should solve a real problem, should bring a real value to their product line. So how could you make sure that you're bringing a real value to their product? Is that someone is willing to pay for your solution. So this is a very good indicator. Although this is an iterative process, meaning that as you go along, your narrative may shift, but you still need to start from where people are willing to pay. They write a check for your solution. So another indicator of product market fit is that you are solving a real problem, an important problem that the industry is desperate to solve. This is very important to consider. So ideally, it should have a huge impact on people's life and on the market. And remember, as an entrepreneur, fall in love with the problem, not the technology. So engineers and scientists sometimes fall in love with the technology, with their solution, before even they make sure that their coolest on earth technology solves the real problem. So if your technology fails and you don't have a viable solution, the probability of failure is high and pivoting would be very costly. But if your technology failed and the problem is still viable, you can try to find an alternative solution. In order to arrive at the right technology problem combination, try to go through a feed-forward feedback loop. So most of you are technical. So it is natural and rational that you start in your field with the technology that you know the best. So try to go and see what set of problem that technology can solve. Among them, select the ones that are most important ones, and ideally the ones that industry is facing. Then see whether your solution is the only solution to those problems, or whether less sophisticated solution can solve them faster and more effectively. Continue this practice until you arrive at the right combination. Your problem should be simple to explain, but sounds impossible to solve. Unless you're lucky enough to stumble upon the next Instagram or Uber, your solutions should sound like science fiction. And if you work on hardcore engineering problems, you position yourself very fast at the forefront of your field. And the potential industrial partner who would love to solve those problems or who are actually solving those problems, they're more than glad to talk to you. And this makes the whole procedure of industrial partnership and engagement easier. Ideally, in an ideal case scenario, you should create a paradigm shift. Go and see how everyone is solving one problem and try to see if you can find a solution using a completely novel technology. So we believe that ALVA is a paradigm shift to a high impact global problem of hearing impairment, which I'll get back to that actually in the coming slides. So at ALVA, we are solving the largest problem of audio industry, the so-called cocktail party problem, where in a noisy environment, the existing devices fail because they're not smart enough to focus on the relevant sounds, and they amplify the noise and the desired sounds altogether. So this becomes annoying for the user to the point that they stop using the device in the noisy environment. At AVA, we have a pivotal paradigm shift approach that goes directly to the brain and biosignal and the environment of the user and understands their attentions first. So their auditory attention, we track their gaze, and we follow their head orientation. At the same time, we classify the audio scene and we separate and enhance the desired sounds and suppress the distracting noises. So this solves a very important problem that existing devices and the industry is not fully addressing. So the reason is because their solution is based on the assumption. So some demographic information of the user, such as their age, lifestyle habits, and so on. And they require frequent meeting with the healthcare professional to adjust the setting of the devices. And most importantly, they're not consistent from one person to another person, day to day, and room to room. AVA solves all of this problem, and our cutting-edge technology addresses several big markets: hearing aids, hearables, noise suppression, and many more markets, such as wearable, extended reality, and augmented reality. So here's why AVA is providing a paradigm shift. While everyone in the audio industry who provide audio enhancement provide it based on some sort of assumption and traditional methods, we stand alone, and our pivotal approach goes directly to the brain and voice signal of the user and understand the attention of the user, enhance the desired sounds, and suppress the distracting noise. Usually, when such paradigm shifts are completely developed, the industry adopts them. So other examples of paradigm shifts are touchscreen, emails, and electric vehicles that we take in for granted today. So getting to my points earlier, AVA provides the right product market fit. We are solving a real problem that has a huge impact on people's life, on the industry. The problem, the cocktail party problem, is simple to explain, impossible to sound. It sounds like science fiction, actually. And it requires working on hardcore engineering problems. And most importantly, it creates a new normal one day. So now let's say you have identified your problem and your solution, how to get the attention from the big player. So the best way is, so you first identify the market and rank them. And among those markets, go and find the most active ones. And then you have to prepare your material. You need to have some sort of hook before trying to reach out. So some sort of visualization. Even if you're working on a software, you need to have a proof of concept, demo, minimum viable product, and so on. So, for example, we yet don't have this Bluetooth earphone device, but without that, explaining attention-directed speech enhancement platform or software would be hard to grasp. You need to have a one-page executive summary. I will describe that later. So how you solve the problem and what value you're bringing. And then after that, identify individual in relevant companies. So start at the top, because most probably they are the ones who are going to make the decision eventually. And if you cannot reach them, go and reach out to people who report to them and so on. Try to understand what motivates them, because you can actually adjust your discussion. So it could be that your solution fits into some sort of a strategic initiative of the company. That you are lucky if that's the case. they might have an immediate need for your technology, or some individual might have some personal incentives, as in the case of tech scouting, finding new innovations. All of these are great motivators. So here is an example of executive summary of AVA. So this is one of the first ones that we actually put together. First, you have your value proposition. You summarize your value proposition. You list their pain points. You tell how much money you can bring them, what you do, including visualization, how you can help them, and what applications your technology can open up for their solution, for their end users, and finally, how to reach you. And now the goal is, now the actual outreach, the goal is to get a reply. So the best ideal way is to get an introduction, but most probably you're in an early stage, you don't have someone to introduce you to Bill Gates or so. So the next things you want to do is to bug them, but please don't bug them too much. So I'll get back to that later. So try to find their emails through LinkedIn, their company page, or some email finder. When you reach out, go to the point. So prepare a short email, less than 200 words, describe who you are and how you are solving their problem. Ask whether they prefer to get more information through email or phone call, and ask them whether they can spare 15 minutes for a virtual call. And don't bombard the whole department. So send the email only to 1-2 people in each tier. And this should include hooks, some sort of visualization. Otherwise, it doesn't drag their attention. So, and try to, since you're going to reach out to so many people, so try to maintain a tracker. And a helpful hint is that don't send emails on Mondays, because Mondays people are busy. Friday they're either busy or they're already in the weekend mode, and during the weekend is crime. So send the emails on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Here's an example of AVA's outreach tracker. So you collect the information of the company. It's important to actually know how you would like to work with them, because this helps you to determine, to frame your value proposition. So point of contact, the information of the contact person you're talking to, and the result. So then what to expect during the meeting. So one question that people ask usually is that how deep to go into the technology during the discussion. So I would say at the high level, because then you don't need the NDA, non-disclosure agreement, because it creates a friction for the follow-up discussions. So remember that you are interested in them, not yourself. And these are the people you would expect to see in the meeting. So it would be you, your team, the person you contacted, their boss, a couple of engineers probably, or one engineer that is working on the actual problem, maybe. And then if there is already some partnership interest, so they will send also some business development lead as well. So keep it conversational, save your slides for the follow-up, not as a crutch for the discussion. Remember that you are a business person, not a scientist. You want to close a deal. And go with your problem, the solution and technology. Talk about the markets you have identified and the business plan. And these are, when you're discussing, again, remember to talk about the product, not the result. They're not interested on your statistical test, t-test, ANOVA, and so on. So they're interested in your product. If you have an IP protection, talk about your patent portfolio. Tell them where you are, and most importantly, where you're going next. Your job as an entrepreneur, neuroscientist, or scientist is to read their minds and read between the lines. So imagine this scenario. For example, we go to the meeting, describe that AVA is decoding the attention of people based on the EEG signal recorded from around the ears of the user. And if they ask you a question, how does your technology compare to fMRI, which is something, a neuroimaging technique like MRI? And this means that they don't know what they're talking about. What is the energy consumption of your algorithm? This could be interpreted as they can work only within these constraints. So do you have any problem with recording through the user's hair? This could actually mean that they have just started working on this and have had this engineering problem. If they ask you, how do you address artifacts, something very specific, it means that they have explored this and could not figure out how to solve this engineering problem. So you may want to solve this problem. Then remember that not only should they be asking questions, you should be too. So you're not there to collect, you're not there to collecting information. So you're there to collect information, not only sharing information. So try to ask direct questions in order to get insights into their activities, interests, and priorities. You could ask this actually kind of questions. How do you see your company using this technology? What is your ideal implementation of the technology that I just described for you? How much would you pay for this solution? This is, again, very important that they want to pay for that. What concerns do you have about the technology? Again, this could give you a great insight into what concerns they already have about this technology. What feature is most interesting for you? This is a great way to do a statistical test on your features. I'll get back to that later. And then you definitely want to get into the next step. Who should I connect with in order to follow up on these items? And this is again important. You want to tell them, we are going to work on the problems that we just discussed. We are putting together our demo. Would you like to contact you once it is ready to showcase? So for example, using the questions, asking the question of what feature is the most interesting for you from leaders in different fields, hearing aids, and AR, VR in our industry outreach meetings. So we figured out that all of them are interested in feature one. So that was the statistical test that I was talking about. So this helps us to focus on the right solution and then gave us an idea of how to actually keep them engaged for the follow-up. After the meeting, the work has just begun. So your task is to work to close the deal. So this is a cheesy example, but treat that as your first date. So this helps you to grasp what I'm trying to convey, actually. Hopefully, you can remember it using this example. So make them feel special. So send them a thank you email. So I had such a wonderful time. So tell them that you had a great discussion, send them the summary of the discussion and the next steps. Put their birthday in your calendar. So set reminder to send the deliverables as you accomplish them. Send chocolate and flowers. So use the tech update as an excuse to reconnect. And I promise. So observe their feedback into your narrative because they know that in this way they know that you're solving their problem, you're working on their problem. So at AVA, we early on managed to meet with so many industrial partners. We gauge their interest, identify the problem. That's very important. Then we build back and work on those problems. We develop demonstrations, prototypes, and proof of concepts. And we got back to them to see if they want to see it, test it. And now we are at the stage formalizing, sending them the development kit and formalizing the interest. So here is an example. So this could be in terms of a proof of concept evaluation kit that you could send to them and they can actually test the capabilities of your technology in action. Letter of intent, which actually you describe how you can continue your partnership or engagement for some certain features or applications, and investment, which is very important for earlier stages startup because it signals the business opportunity for that technology. So we prepared an evaluation kit, for example, like this. We describe your technology, how it works, how they can actually use that, how you're solving their problems and what innovations you have actually had doing so, and then what futures hold for them. So since we are still on this stage, the rest remains to be continued. But using the strategy I discussed here, we managed to talk to several big players in different markets. So here was medical device, AR and VR. Some of these happened through introduction, some of them just through from our incubator tandem launch. So many other of them through the purely cold call that we did. And in case of 6 of these companies, they reach out to us, very big players. And I cannot tell you what motivated them, what led them actually to contact us, but I can tell you, if you work on a problem that someone is desperate to solve, they always seek you out as a part of their solution. So with that, I would like to thank you for your time, and good luck with your industry outreach. And if you want to know more about AVA, you can visit our website, and I would be glad to answer any question you may have.
Thank you so much, Naeem, for your presentation. Yeah, could you just introduce yourself, because I think we forgot to do that. So as an entrepreneur, what do you do exactly, so that our guests know what you do?
So I'm actually the CTO and co-founder of AVA. I come from a background in computational neuroscience and biomedical engineering. And my job at AVA is working with really brilliant engineers and scientists that work on different fields. So we have brain-computer interface, in which actually we decode the brain activity of the user to understand their attentions, and some other applications. At the same time, we have an acoustic field in which we treat the sounds, and we separate the sounds, classify the scene, and we work on hardware. So this is a reference design we are building. We work on the design and material science to create new generations of actually sensors. And what we do right now, we are at the stage where we are going to grow. And the next stage is to continue this partnership engagement with the industrial partners, and hopefully start getting some traction from the industry.
Thank you very much. If anyone has a question, feel free. Yeah, I'm gonna you can unmute yourself.
Sure.
Hi, thank you for your very interesting talk. Very cool. I think because we're like so in the research that sometimes we don't realize that we have solutions to problems. Yeah. And I'm wondering if you can give some advice on understanding the problem, like what is the problem that we can solve, the range of what we can do to get inspired that there are problems that we can solve.
Sure. So for example, I'll tell you, you have to have some sort of idea there. For example, you say, my concern is to solve problem of people with mental health, for example, or seniors. So you should have some sort of, let's say, target market at the beginning. Who would be your end user? What kind of problem? So you should start somewhere. So it's good. That's as well I was mentioning. So probably you're a neuroscientist. So see, for example, the kind of tools that you are using. If you are using, I don't know what is your field. For example, if you come from neuroimaging, you're using, or you come from more like, cell neurobiology. You have to start from where you're comfortable, and then see, for example, okay, can I use this technology to predict, to have biomarkers for schizophrenia, or I don't know, Alzheimer, and so on. And see, now go and say, okay, this is my fancy AI. I would like to do that, but see whether there are like, maybe there is already a solution, or there are some less sophisticated solutions to that problem. So you have to start from, for instance, I started another project before AVA. My concerns were seniors. So I went and I took a paper that studied 50,000 seniors, and I looked into the tables, and I saw that 35% of, for example, Canadian seniors suffer from social isolation. So you say this problem exists and it has not solved. So then you say, how can I solve this problem, for example? What are the tools that I can employ? And then you go back, okay, my solution is this technology, but can another technology solve it? So I think you have to start from somewhere. If you're a neuroscientist, I would start using some sort of, knowledge that I have, the research that you are doing, see whether that actually has some sort of application on that.
Thank you.
You're right.
Okay, I might have another one.
Sure.
If you could, like, is there any difference, and I believe there are differences, between pitching to industrial partners and pitching to investors?
Yes.
It's two different things. So if you have like the main differences without like getting into a lot of
Sure.
details, but
So the industrial partners, when you want to partner them, they should strategically need your solution. That's very important. Means that they have some initiatives, they have this in mind that we are working on this problem, or for example, in our case, they have some sort of technology, they have like AR glasses that our technology could fit very well there. So we reformulate that. We have some few slides saying how our solution can actually, we personalize the meeting. For investors, you can keep it general. You say, this is what our technology is, our solution is, these are the markets. And then, but for the industrial partners, you can be more specific and go into their problems, discuss about the opportunities on their side. And so this is the main difference there. And then at the end of the day, again, both of them, they want to write a check for you. So you have to remember what motivates them there. Industrial partners, they would like you probably work a little bit on the problems they are solving, but you want to stay neutral. VC, venture capitalists or angel investors, they have their own priorities. They want you to grow and they want their money to become, so they have different motivations. That's why you can actually adjust your discussions around those motivations.
great. Thank you so much, Naeem.
My pleasure.
If there are no other questions.
One more question. Sorry.
Sure, please go ahead.
What stage is the best stage of approaching the big players? For example, you should have your proof of concept ready, or if it's just an idea and
that's a great question. So when you have an idea, I would start with the end user. So for example, if you are solving problem of seniors, and I know about your venture, Omid, so you're working with some sort of patients. So I would start talking to the end users first to see whether what you are providing actually is an actual need. And then I would go start talking to the industry partners when you have some sort of technology going on. At least you have a proof of concept showing that this technology works, but with certain limitations. So because without that, they don't come because they are very busy, they don't come and talk to you. So you need to have some sort of visualization, some sort of proof of concept, minimum viable product, prototype that shows it shouldn't be perfect. So scientists, again, they have this idea of I have to make this perfect, look good. Industry wants to see if you can get something done. That it was like they have a hard time getting that, get it started. Sometimes they don't actually get it started because of all the bureaucratic difficulties in the companies, large companies. So try to go with the minimum really viable product that you can showcase the capabilities of your technology. We have started, for example, showcasing capabilities of attention tracking just for 2 sounds at the beginning. Then, that's where you can start from.
Thank you.
Right. Well, if you have any other questions that come to mind after the presentation, feel free to ask them. We will still have time after the presentations to ask a few questions. So thank you again, Naeem.
Thank you.
For a very insightful presentation. And now we're going to have another perspective from Dr. Garth. So he's going to provide another presentation about the topic. And so Dr. Garth, he's the Vice President in Business Development and Partnership for the Ontario Brain Institute, so OBI. His mandate is to manage the OBI's commercialization efforts and its relationships with Ontario neurotechnology companies and multinationals. So Garth, the floor is yours. So if you want to share your screen.
Okay, thanks, Sarah, for inviting me to speak.
Pleasure.
I completely agree with a lot of what Naeem said in his presentation. I like the birthday wishes one. That was good. I'm gonna add that to my set of things. So I'm going to be taking this conversation to a different place where I'm a funder. We fund research, we fund companies, and we also help make introductions between our researchers and companies to companies, other industrial partners, and for investors. Our version of partnerships and industrial partnerships takes many different forms. And I think I'm just going to go through a real quick overview of what the Ontario Brain Institute does to give you our perspective of where we're coming from, and hopefully it'll be useful for everybody else. So, so this is basically the Ontario Brain Institute. So, you know, we're funded by the provincial government. We are, we try to, one second. Sorry about that. And so I think the whole point of us is that we're setting up an innovation platform whereby, you know, all that great neuroscience research can actually translate into something that has some patient impact. You know, we have a very interesting view of neuroscience and where it is in comparison to other diseases. And we think that, you know, it's about team neuroscience. We think that you have to work as a team, collect data, share data, and then have some real tangible solutions for patients moving forward. So this picture is supposed to show we have lots of institutions across Canada. We have 5 research groups that, you know, there are anywhere between 25 to 50 researchers. But the key part of what we do is we, as a consequence of our data, as a consequence of our funding, we get their data in a single informatics platform we call BrainCode, which is outside of the research institutes. And we standardize inputs, and that's a real key feature. So our partnerships can be with the researchers, it could be with the large groups of researchers, a strategic partnership, or it could be from the data that we've collected. So essentially, the middle picture is the OBI network. It's the Ontario Brain Institute. It's our research network, which are the circles. And we also have associated patient groups with each of the of research groups. And of course, BrainCode, our informatics platform. If you say you're going to have patient impact, you literally need to have the patients at the table in order for us to decide what is impact. Naeem says, talk to your customer. You know, when we first started talking to the patient groups and we asked them, you know, do you want to come to our workshops? You want to be at the table when we decide on what research we needed to do? They really didn't know what to do. They came and just basically said, we don't know what we're doing. So now, you know, we do basically a top, we go through this process where we find out what are the top 10 things that these research groups are, or these parents or these advocates are Googling about every night. And that gives us huge insights, not just for our research, but also for our companies. We've had partnerships with companies, early stage companies, with these patient groups, and they'll give you some real good feedback on your device and on your application. It's like beta testing. They're really interested in participating in these product developments. So if you look at the blue bubbles, on the left, you have entrepreneurs. That's one of our funding programs for early stage companies coming out of universities and in the cluster. I'll talk about more about that later. The one below that is called NERD, which stands for Neurotech Early Research and Development. And that's our funding program where we do dilutive funding to companies. And the whole goal for NERD, and I'll explain later, is to get you to your first big paycheck, first big raise. We'll talk about Canadian companies and how they, you know, struggle with finding good industrial partners. And our market size is something that hinders us quite a lot. And we tend to go to the States a lot. But I think there's opportunities to be had in Canada. Down at the bottom right is our industry partnerships. And because of the way OBI is set up, industry partnerships for us take the form of research partnerships. They take the form of data partnerships. You know, you can partner with big pharma, big device, big tech, and also with our patient groups. And I think there's also a interesting opportunity in Canada, especially in the wearable space, between Canadian Neurotech to Canadian Neurotech. we'll discuss that later. And of course, the goal is healthcare adoption. We tend not to go through government channels for that. We tend to go to the patients directly. And like Naeem says, talking to your customer is quite insightful. So entrepreneurs, and I don't know, I'm not sure about the crowd, but there's no shortage of startups in Canada. In fact, we like to fund startups all the same. We have this peanut butter mentality where we just kind of give everybody the same amount of money. So what we found was professors, researchers start companies, but they traditionally have a very busy day job being a professor or a researcher. And so generally there's a postdoc in their lab that's pretending to be a postdoc that's actually running the company. That's the person we want to fund. Canada has done an amazing job setting up accelerators and incubators. We're not going to be setting up an incubator or accelerator anytime soon. Just we would, make sure that postdoc, the researcher, and the can be the CSO. But the day-to-day, hardcore, full-time job of running a small company, going through all the applications, going through all the office actions for your IP, going through all of the pitch competitions, mentoring, IP seminars, professor really or a researcher really doesn't have a lot of time to do that. This person who is eager, young, and ready to go was never going to be a professor anyways. This is who we generally fund. That's about 40% of our companies, and the other 60% are actually companies in the cluster. Give them $50,000, just enough money to get them in trouble. It's non-dilutive. It's actually matchable. So a lot of Canadian funds, a lot of Canadian programs allow them to, you need matching funds, and this can act as a match. And they've done very well in their leveraging. NERD is an investment program. It's based on a pull model. So a lot of companies, so let's say we're talking about these partnerships with industrial partners. Generally, Canadian companies, when they speak to industrial partners and investors, are generally too early stage. They love the technology. Generally, you hear it from investors and from companies, love it, too early stage. And when we started asking the industrial partners and the investors, what would you like to see in order for you to really have a good conversation with these companies? And so they're very clear. I mean, they have very different goals and what they want out of the company. One wants to make money and the other one wants to make money, but they're, it's slightly different ways of doing it. So they're very direct in what exactly they want to see partner companies have. And what we do as part of our investment is we pay for those services, those product development milestones directly. So the company gets invoiced, but we pay the invoice. The company can get their shreds, but they still get the investor sees the product milestones. And now what we're seeing is investors are now coming up to us and saying, I have this company, we need to de-risk our investment or our partnerships with them. Can you help them? Okay. So here are some results to date. We've helped, actually, I think the number is closer to 90 companies now. They're all over the place. We don't do a lot of pharma. The amount of money we have is a drop in the bucket for pharma. We generally do a lot more devices and software informatics applications. We're doing pretty good. We think there's more to do across Canada. I think we're announcing a national neurotech funding initiative next year, where the significant funding, where the company can really go across Canada to find partners. I think that's the way for us to unlock the potential in neurotech across Canada. All right. So this is essentially what OBI system's all about, right? So we made a decision that we were only, because we have this large research group, because we have this data platform, we were only going to go with clinically validated neurotech. We add no value to consumer devices. That's a branding and marketing play that neuroscientists suck at. So we're going to help validate neurotech and drive those partnerships from clinically validated neurotech. Our thesis is that if you are, and this is something for industrial partners, let's say you're in the mindfulness space, if you actually show that your mindful app actually does what it says it does, you've already beaten 99.9% of the competition. Now, our thesis is if you've clinically validated your neurotech, investment and partnerships would follow. We're still working on that, but that's the thesis that we live with based on the network that we have. So you have generally companies going and getting clinical data. You have, these patient groups that we work with to get real world evidence. And we feel that one of the ways that you can drive industry partnerships, especially in the software application space, is getting data that didn't get generated in a very clean environment in a clinic or in the hospital. If you have a technology that you want to use remotely with patients or with the general population, you literally need to get data from patients and the general public remotely. We see time and time again, people coming to us, especially EEG, that show great results in a clinic, but once it gets out in the wild, it's a completely different ballgame. How do you package it? How do you get the person to put it on themselves? It's a different world. So things to consider, that's what we do. We manage partnerships with multinationals, we manage partnerships with small companies, we manage partnerships with big tech. We try to drive how, and being going along the clinically validated niche gives us an edge in terms of a lot of the conversations that we have. So the challenges in neuroscience space is that neuroscience is hard. You've seen a lot of the failures in big pharma. So we think that neuroscience is where cancer was about 20, 30 years ago, where everybody has put a label on a disease like mental health, when in fact, it's about a couple hundred different diseases that are under that umbrella. And for you to do a pill or something around depression is like trying to test, one solution in a completely heterogeneous population. Alzheimer's, different flavors of Alzheimer's. Think of it as the autism spectrum disorder. They have kind of figured out the different populations along that disorder. So the second point is the regulatory doesn't match that spectrum-based approach to neurosciences. They still require people to have 3,000 persons in a phase 3. You're starting to see some orphan indications now, so that's being a little better. The other problem we have is a lot of the receptors that researchers or companies look at as big pharma have been coming in and out of neuroscience quite a bit because of these failures. Because of Biogen getting that approval, now all of a sudden big pharma is back in. But the problem is that I think there are other opportunities aside from the bipolar nature of big pharma. So opportunities. Big tech is obviously really interested in neurotech, and you should broaden the way you approach. And just like Naeem said, again, if you want to do consumer devices, there's no shortage. But now you're included with the other 200 applications or devices that do the same thing. If you're clinically validated, and this is just our thesis, this is just the way we think, we feel you're going to have a leg up in terms of these opportunities. And the one thing that we've seen that we think has been underutilized is, these wearables, the devices, especially in the neuroscience realm, it's very difficult. We have this hard skull around our heads that block a lot of signals and distort a lot of signals. We think that there's an opportunity for multiple modalities to work together on the same person that may better assess and impact brain function. We think that if you match things like EEG or FNIRS or audio with ocular, you're going to have a lot better chance of impacting patients' lives. So that means that small companies really should look for other small companies and startups. And maybe the combination of these different modalities makes for a better partnership with a larger company. One last slide. How am I doing for time? So things to consider. Because I'm coming at it from a very vague perspective, I've really taken it a little bit higher up so that we can just ask me any question afterwards. So these are the questions that I was asked. What does an entrepreneur need to know before reaching out to an industrial partner? You have to prepare. Like, I can't tell you how many times somebody's come to me and wanted to pitch me something that I don't even fund. Like, I don't even know how I'm going to fund this. You have to make sure your product fits their mandate. Pipeline, recent news. If you go to a pharma company that just failed their depression drug, may not be the best time to talk to them about the depression drug. So you have to be really up and prepare for these meetings. Large companies, you can go through 8 to 10 meetings before you find the right person. Timing is everything. Luck has a lot to do with it. But if you think you're going to go to a big company, big tech, and meet the person who's going to be the decision maker right off the bat, it's going to take a lot of meetings. You might get lucky, but generally 8 to 10 meetings. You have to go to the right partnering events. There's lots of partnering events. What you're going to find is the same people go to these partnering events all the time. The same innovation partners, the same contacts from these big companies. They send these folks around, and you have to be aware. You can't just go in, show up for a meeting, and then leave. You got to watch the crowd. Who's speaking? Who's the ones that people generally do? They'll happily take a meeting with you. And what, like Naeem says, if you have a product that solves a big problem for them, things will happen. Relationship management. Exactly what Naeem said about, birthdays and all that kind of stuff. Companies now are, instead of having these separate groups of business development and research and product development, they're now having people as innovation leads, and look at their titles and see whether or not those are the right folks to contact. LinkedIn is great to reach out, but just be prepared to get you have to do a lot of meetings before you get to the right person. And the goal is to find a champion in your industry partner. That's the goal to life. You might think your product is going to drive everything. You need to find someone in your industry partner that really likes your product and is willing to speak about it in the face of 20, 30 other products that they're looking at. How to articulate your pitch to make your innovation product more valuable. I'm going to say this to this crowd, and please don't get upset with me, but less science and more market opportunity. There's no shortage of people telling me about their science. And God love them, I'm a neuroscientist and I love neuroscience. But at some point, you're going to have to tell me how this is going to make money. And you have to figure that out. Now, the other part of this partnership is you have to show that you're going to be a good partner. There's lots of people that are not good partners. Finding a good partner is very difficult. Are you going to be able to move quickly? Are you going to be able to achieve your goals? Are you going to be able to meet your milestones? Those are key things about being a good partner. What pitfalls to avoid? Obviously, too much science and not enough market opportunity. The science bit will speak for itself. You can talk about it in an 8-minute presentation. Talk about it for 2 minutes. The other 6 is about how the market potential. And this is the hardest one we've had with entrepreneurs, is to build a team of skills. You can't do everything yourself. You're gonna have to get, hard work only goes so far. Like, it goes far, but when it's time for partnerships, you need some skills. You need adults. I don't know how else to put this, but you need people that will have skills, done it before, as an advisor, as a mentor. If you go about it as I'm just going to outwork everybody, you can be successful, but it's very difficult. Now, have a plan. Everybody has a plan. Everybody thinks that they know what's going to happen with their product, but expect pivots, expect changes. Things like you finally get your first big check, an angel or a VC really loves you, and then they kindly introduce you to the new CEO of the company as a result of their raise. These things happen, and you have to pivot and you have to make do with the best situation. So these are really general kind of things that, for me, if I got into the specifics of each of the partnership opportunities that we've had, we'd be here all day. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Garth, for your presentation. If anyone has any questions to ask Garth. Yeah, the 2 presentations were pretty complementary, and we could see that whatever the field, the same things come back. And if I can, just summarize quickly. So what needs to be done is like to be well prepared, to have patience, to make sure that your product fits the needs of the industrial partner and that it actually solves an actual problem or issue. And you need to determine what this problem and issue is, and adapt if you see that you're you're not really taking the right path, and you can still adapt and find other solutions. So correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the general things that I have gathered through these presentations that were extremely interesting and insightful. So if you have any more things to add, or oh yeah, there's a question maybe or two.
I have a question for
Sure.
Garth. I think it's very similar to my problem question. When you talk about market opportunity, what advice do you have for us to know how to do that properly without it becoming a science and us getting too bogged down into understanding what the problem is, the opportunities for the innovation, etc.
Yeah. So I think that it's very difficult for you to figure out what the market opportunity if you're sitting in a research institute. If you're developing a product for the research market, easy peasy. You can tell them what pipette works better than another pipette. That's not a big deal. But if you're going out into that market research and you need some insight, you literally need to talk to people like that will help you. And again, some people will give you bad advice. Some people will give you long drawn out advice, and it's basically like Naeem said, it's just going to be, you're going to have to test drive a lot of things. You're not going to be able to figure out the perfect market opportunity. You can just do your best guess, but you have to work at it, and you have to go outside of, maybe your tech transfer office is probably the best. The folks at Healthy Brain, Healthy Lives are probably going to give you some insight on what you can do, but you also have to be prepared for someone to tell you the market opportunity for this is not great, right? And then you have to, and those are the tough conversations people are going to have. And so you're saying, just this is a great research, but there are 8 other drugs in that market, or there's you're adding an extra step to the drug development process, or your product will cost $1.4 million to make. So these are just things that you have to face, but you actually have to have those conversations early. And so do you talk to your tech transfer office about IP? So that's also a really good way to figure out market potential too. If you look at the IP landscape around where you're trying to go, if there's a ton there, that's a good sign. If there's nobody in there, it's also a good sign, but harder to see. Okay.
Any other questions before we wrap up? All right. Well, thank you both, Naeem and Garth, for your presentations. That was really, really interesting and insightful. And I hope that for everyone it was useful for you, either right now or for future collaborations or partnerships. So this recording is going to be available on our website in the coming days, and more webinars and seminars are going to happen with Neurosphere on other topics. So thank you very much, everyone, for your attention, and have a great day and great weekend.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you again.
Thanks, everybody.
Naeem,
Take care.
Thank you, Garth.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.